What we do have available is we have gas. Every day at Prudhoe Bay, 8 billion cubic feet of gas are pumped back into the ground. That is about 10% of the usage of the entire United States of America. It is, when you talk about the gas line, it is not a small thing. It's not a little thing. It is massive amounts of gas. Huge amounts of money to try to get it to market, but we have a lot of it. If we can get over the political and the engineering and the economic hurdles, that will be one of the things that I think sustains the state. If you get a gas line built, the exploration on the slope, I think, will boom. Right now, if you go looking for oil, at $100 a barrel looking for oil, you probably make it pay. But if you think it's going to be at 60, will you go look? Most likely you're going to find gas, not oil. Are you going to be willing to go in there and take the chance and the risk in this high-cost environment? You look at the production decline of the big fields. Are you going to be willing to come in there? If you have a gas line and you can sell whatever you find, you'll go looking for oil. You'll be able to monetize the gas, and it's a big winner. Everything changes if you get a gas line. All of the economics on the North Slope for all those billion-dollar investments that circulate around the economy, everything changes if you get a gas line. Heavy oil, lots of it, very expensive to get out of the ground. It goes from anything from being like a tar-like substance to it just gets thicker and thicker. There's a range of viscosities that they have in there. We've got a lot of it. We've got a lot of heavy oil. Right now, we monetize, the state of Alaska gets very little of it. The technology just isn't there yet. So what can the state do? Well, first and foremost, I think saving some of the money and putting off the day when you have to make the difficult decisions help. Encourage resource development with not only just with money, but with generally with policies, with permitting decisions. Nobody wants to do a project poorly. Nobody wants to do a dirty project. But you can't just stop it because you don't like it. And that is the goal of a lot of people, I think, is that they just don't want the development at all. So it's, you have to face so many hurdles to try to actually do something. Other than that, and as a politician that serves in a 2-year term, it is a difficult thing to start looking at a 10-year economic picture, because sometimes you do that and you make very unpopular decisions. This isn't fun to me to get up here and give what I call my doom and gloom speech to the Juneau Chamber of Commerce. But as I said at the beginning, nothing that I said today is really very controversial. People don't think of it all in a package, but these are just simple facts about how our economy works. If we don't start making decisions thinking 10 years out instead of 2 years out, do what's popular now, get reelected, do what's popular again, get reelected, and 10 years from now, we'll be worse off. It's a difficult thing, and it's not bad legislators. It is the way that Western democracies work. It is difficult to think that way, but we have to force it. And once again, we do what you tell us to do. If there's enough pressure from the public, then politicians will do that. But without that pressure, we all tend to think long or short term. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions as I can. Yes, sir.
The unfunded pension obligation is growing about $1.5 billion a year. It will probably exceed $10 billion June 2008. Legislature has not put any money other than funding the recurring. What steps are you going to take this next session to actually address the unfunded obligation? That is an off-balance sheet liability that's growing out of control.
I've heard two things. I'm not probably the right guy to ask, but there are two answers that have been discussed. One came out just in the last committee, the House Resources Committee, and actually I believe Representative Johnson offered an amendment to try to say, at these high prices right now, you're going to be awash with cash. At the high prices, before the production starts to drop off, you can take some of that cash and try to fill the hole. The other one, more of I believe, a long-term solution. There's a bill that made it through the House, and I believe is somewhere in the Senate process, on pension obligation bonds. And I think that is one thing you need to look at, is using pension obligation bonds as well as putting some money straight into it to see what happens with it. I'll be the first to admit I'm not an expert on the PERS and TERS system by any stretch of the imagination, but I know those are two things that have been discussed right now, is while we're going to be flush with cash, put some cash into the system, and then talk about the bonding issues. Representative Nelson.
Thanks. I have a question. My dad called this morning. He's a real local guy too. And he heard that the gas pipeline is not feasible based on what Pedro Van Meer said on our first day of special session. Can you talk about that?
Dr. Van Meer said the costs have gone up, and that the gas pipeline isn't viable under any circumstances. A lot of the economists, not the ones we've got here, but when you read the oil economics, and every day I tend to live and breathe it, and it's a sickness. It is an unusual occurrence that's going on right now that the price of oil has gone up like this at $90 or $95 a barrel, and the price of gas has been stable. So right now, the costs with building a project like that, costs for oil exploration follow the price of the product. If I am Doyon Drilling, and I see that my customer ConocoPhillips is making a ton of money, and the lease for my drill rig comes up, I'm going to charge more for my drill rig. It's as simple as that, or my truck contract, or whatever. So the costs of doing business, as in any business, if your customer's making more money, and you can afford to charge them more as a vendor, you're going to do it. So cost, as the price of the product goes up, the costs follow it. So as the costs follow it, if they don't follow gas, that's what Van Meers was talking about. The costs have followed the price of oil, but the price of gas has not followed it, so that the costs would overwhelm the price of oil. I won't comment on whether he is right or whether he is wrong. I know that he said that, you could hear a pin drop in the room. But if you look at those two factors together, if the price of oil, which a lot of people say is kind of on a bubble right now, it's not really following supply and demand, it shouldn't be this high. If it tends to drop back to a normal level, costs eventually would follow it back down. You know, your drill rig, you couldn't afford to charge as much, so you charge less. So if the price of oil drops back down, if they stay separated and the costs remain that high, you see problems.